Welcome to West Virginia and Commonplace. I'm not going to do my normal intro for this one. This one is an amazing episode. I have Brian with me. Brian is from Drink the Movies podcast. That's his movie podcast. And then his other podcast is one of the greatest podcasts out there for anything Star Wars related. His Drink the Movies is a great podcast too. But Old Republic podcast. Um, he goes in. Him and his co-host, they go in here and they take care of Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, anything that's surrounding Star Wars with this podcast. The great thing about this is that it takes a lot to be a Star Wars fan. And nothing against you Trekkies out there. You guys have whatever you have, but Star Wars is more than just a religion. It's more than a lifestyle. Well, it actually is. It's actually a lifestyle because when you get into it, you don't leave it. Some things that we like that were canon or not canon, but whatever. Today I have Brian with me, and we're going to talk about some video games. Star Wars has been influential in everyone's life. And quick disclaimer I'm going to put in here real quick. And this is for everybody, all of us from 36 to 52. I understand some people had the Star Wars on Atari. People had it on the Game Gear, Genesis, and Super Nintendo. We're going to talk about the PC era of Star Wars and some of the games, but I'm going to exclude from this because one thing that was a disservice in the Star Wars games, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, was when the re-release of the Super Star Wars and the different things that JVC made prior that got released on the Vita and stuff like that, you lose a little bit of gameplay, different controllers, different modes, keyboard to mouse. It's so many different interactions that you can have playing a Star Wars game. So real quick, amazing shameless plug. Let me throw it back over to Brian real fast. Brian, please introduce yourself. Tell us about your podcast and do some shameless plugging for your podcast.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, my name's Brian. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. My whole life, I was born in 1981, so I was, just a little bit too young to miss that original release of Star Wars. But I had an older brother who was into Star Wars, so I got like into it like from a super early age. And like you said, yeah, it's like consumed my life for sure. So I've been a huge fan of that, and then got into podcasting. I love movies, and I love like craft cocktails and stuff. So my friend Michaela and I started Drink Movies podcast, which is a movie and like cocktail that's kind of tied into the movie, either on screen or something that's kind of created from like the way that the movie makes you feel, and that's called Drink the Movies. So that's really fun. We've been going that we're almost to 70 episodes on that one. And then the other podcast, which is a more Star Wars centric one, like you said, Knights of the Old Republic. We really kind of dive into that, the Old Republic timeline. That's the Old Republic podcast. I joined up with Cassia doing that one in late March of last year. So almost a year I've been on that one. Now doing that with her, and yeah, that's a ton of fun. We talk about the game. We talk about if we wanted to turn it into a movie, what that would look like, kind of different aspects of that, and then just more of like general Star Wars like news and reviews, and talking about the TV shows, all that good stuff. So we kind of jump all over the place there. So if you're into Star Wars, check that out, and if you're into movies, check out Drink the Movies. And yeah, we have a good time. So
okay, now I'm gonna go back in time real quick, guys. With this in audience, Star Wars Arcade. It came out, I don't know, like 93, 94, something like that. That was my first initial outside the box experience with Star Wars. Like that one was amazing. I think it came out on the consoles, but that was the first Star Wars experience that I had as a child that I vaguely, well, now I remember it. Like you can still find that displayed in certain places. Certain Dave and Buster's still have it. So that was my first experience there. But Brian, please dive into your experiences with Star Wars video games.
Yeah, so I remember that one. The one you're talking about, I think, is like the Star Wars trilogy arcade. And they had like the big awesome like sit down cabinets and stuff. But I remember like there was like a skating rink by our house, and we would always go there for like field trips and like birthday parties and stuff. And they had like the old like the vector graphics Star Wars arcade machine where you're just doing like the trench run like over and over. So I remember that like growing up, some memories of that. I remember we had like the original Nintendo, so my mom would always stop and either rent movies for us, so getting Star Wars in that way, or they had Nintendo games you could rent. So I played like the Nintendo Star Wars games. I was terrible at them. Those games are brutally hard. I don't know. I could never get into those. But really, my big kind of introduction into Star Wars video games, I got my first like 486 computer. I don't know. I was probably like 13-ish years old. And what do you get for Windows 95? You get all those classic LucasArts games. So you had like X-Wing and TIE Fighter. You had Rebel Assault, which was amazing. I loved Rebel Assault. It was a live action game, right? So like full motion video. This was like the first time you were like actually seeing Star Wars like in my lifetime, because I was too young to remember Return of the Jedi, right? That came out like when I would have been like 2 years old. So this was the first time of seeing like real live actual Star Wars, other than just reading the books and stuff like that. So I loved that. That was right in my wheelhouse. I love it so much. I have a Steam Deck in order, and I got it basically so I could get Rebel Assault and play that for sure.
All right, and the thing about that with Rebel Assault and the games that follow with that, like you said, it was a different experience for us because it was our experience. And I remember what was the strategy game? Star Wars Empire at War. I don't know if you ever played that. That was one that got me. But TIE Fighter, and then we'll go into the Jedi Knight games because I know you have experience with those.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, TIE Fighter was the one that did it for me. And I'll say Dark Forces, yeah. It was something about, like you said, that aesthetic of it being for us. And I think the one that we probably won't talk too much about, Shadows of the Empire, probably did that for me.
Okay.
Before we go in depth, because it was not canon. It was a whole new story. I had at that age, let's see, 1996 or 97. I don't know. I was like 10 maybe. Steve Perry wrote that book, and I even read. And I know you probably were just like I was. I read the books too because it was just like I had a good imagination. Star Wars always brought a good imagination period for me. So, what's the next game in your catalog that was part of your experience?
Yeah, so I had those video games. I had like Yoda stories, and then it was it was going into like you got into that like where the consoles like started to be more of like computers, right? So you had the Nintendo 64, you had the PlayStation, so then you had stuff coming out, yeah, like Shadows of the Empire, the Trilogy Arcade coming out, all that stuff. I remember like that fighting game, like Masters of Terras Kasi. I never had that. I had like, but they used to like the original PlayStation, like back then it was so awesome. You get like the demo discs, so you could just like play, like, had like a couple of the fighters. So I remember like, getting into that, and yeah, just all like the Jedi Outcast stuff. It was also cool. And then, it kind of tided you over. And then once episode 1 came out, it was like all bets were off. It was just like a flood of Star Wars stuff coming in. You had like Racer, you had the episode 1 like game, which I had on PlayStation. Looking back on it, that game, not that great, but it was so much fun. You didn't even care if it was good or not because it was just more Star Wars. It was in your living room. It was great.
Yes, it was. And then we came to a period like 2000, 2001 when Star Wars gaming changed. BioWare was hired in to make Knights of the Old Republic. Now, here's my story with Knights of the Old Republic. Everyone had it on Xbox. If you're a Star Wars fan, you bought an Xbox probably just for that. The sequel, people will say what they want about it, and we'll go into the sequel in just a second. Knights of the Old Republic, I'm going to go past and then go into the future if you don't care real fast.
Sure, yeah.
All right, so Xbox, it was amazing. I probably put in 200 hours. I liked the idea of the dark side and the light side. Inside Star Wars, it made me feel like I was truly a part of Star Wars. Like it, and I don't know how it made you feel, but I just remember the choices I made. I wanted to be a bad guy.
Okay.
I wanted to be with the Sith, So I made choices that way, and it had great replay value. That's why I said 200 hours, because I would go back and play to make different choices, because that's one game that you can, to me, it has one of the greatest replay values of any game, because you can go back to it even now. Now, fast forward in the future, I made a mistake. I'm not going to sit here and lie to any of you guys. I went out here, and I'm a Apple guy, so I love the iPad. I got Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic on that. And my son was 3 years old, and I had bought him an iPad. He sat there with me, even though it was touchscreen. And that was a long process, a lot of hand movement.
Sure.
We both sat there, and we beat that game in like 45, 50 hours.
Nice.
And from that point, I was hooked on, we can play Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic on anything. I put it on my Android. I had it on my iPhone. periods of life have been spent more time of my life has been spent with Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know about you. So let's get into your story, Brian, about Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay, yeah. So Knights of the Old Republic. Yeah, so this game came out in 2003. I was in college, so it came out I want to say it was like November of 2003. So I was like midway through my senior year, like I'm buckling down, working on graduating. Now I'd never been an Xbox guy. I had a PlayStation 2. So it wasn't in the cards. I was a starving college student. So I was like, okay, so I graduate, I get my first job, and then it's time. And I remember exactly, I bought a refurbished Xbox bundle from GameStop, and it came with the original Halo, of course, because you had to get that if you got Xbox, basically, and Knights of the Old Republic. So I played it. It was about 6 months after it came out, but I remember like reading about it so much. Early 2000s, that was like the internet was just getting started, so we had message boards, and you could go to like the websites and all this stuff. So I was reading about this game all the time. I wanted it so bad. I it just was not financially in the cards. So I had to wait a few months for it, but I got it and I played it, and I loved it so much because you're going into the Star Wars world that, people that love Star Wars love this world. You love learning about it. You love learning about the characters, where they come from, all their backstories. But now you're actually playing that story, and you're playing it more or less as yourself. The protagonist in the game is kind of a blank slate. So it's very easy to, kind of identify yourself in that. And you really just get to explore being in Star Wars. And that was the first time that you ever got to do it kind of on that depth. And then the story is so great. Yeah, I mean, it was just, it just blew me away. And obviously, I'm doing a podcast about it here, 20 years after the fact, because it really just sticks with you. And there's so many people that just hold it near and dear. But yeah, I mean, it was crazy playing that thing on the original Xbox, just, pouring hours into it, like every night when I first got it, getting through it and then playing it again. And like you said, I mean, you have all the different choices, but then you also have all the different companions. So the story, you get all sorts of different like story dialogue and story beats depending on who you're taking out with you. It's just awesome. So yeah. That was kind of like the, you playing Rebel Assault and stuff. That's awesome. You're climbing this mountain, and then for me at least, you get kind of to like the top of the mountain there with KOTOR.
Yeah, like KOTOR, just something about it. Like I don't know, I don't want to like fanboy about it all the time, but like I just remember, and I'll give y'all a quick experience. Like I'm a console guy. I got into Steam and PC stuff a little bit later, a little too late, I think. I don't think I really bought a gaming computer up until maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. So I kind of feel like I got the back catalog later. What happened was there was a jump from Rebel Assault 2, which there's a time between them, probably about a good 5 years. But Rebel Assault 2 was kind of like my last Star Wars experience that I really can remember because I had it on PlayStation. So that was my console experience. And from that to KOTOR, was just amazing. And real quick, going back into the Jedi Knight series. The Jedi Knight series, that was my PC experience.
Okay.
Heavily, because there were expansions to it. That series alone, Jedi Knight, it changed the way I felt about first person and third person games because of how you could switch back and forth. And Outcast. And Outcast, I ended up having that on consoles because I had a GameCube. But as a PC experience, it was amazing. And then obviously as a re-release, I've gotten it now. That's the only thing I haven't opened because I was kind of like, I need to wait. Jedi Knight Academy, Jedi Knight Academy, I jumped right into that. No issue. And I want to think, outside of that, was there anything major? There was Knights of the Republic, Knights of the Republic 2, and then there was the greatest thing, the Old Republic. Did you play the Old Republic?
So I've not gotten into the Star Wars: The Old Republic. I've not gotten into it. I actually just downloaded it the other day because I was intending to play it. I'm not sure how it's going to play on my computer. Like I mentioned, I have the Steam Deck on order, so I'm probably going to wait for that. But I know people really love it. So I'm excited to get in and dig around with it. There was another MMORPG that Star Wars did, and what was I don't even remember what it was called. It was called like Galaxies or something. It had kind of a short life, but then this came along, done by BioWare. At the time, at least, it was the most expensive, like massive, MMORPG ever made. But yeah, I never really got into it just in that particular time of my life. But I'm really interested to kind of dig into it and to learn those stories and see what the hype's all about. Just because I really like that time period of Star Wars. So it's definitely something that I need to get into.
All right, so I want to ask you is who is your favorite character in Knights of the Old Republic?
Oh man, oh man. So on Instagram, my username is Astrodroid because R2D2 has always been my favorite character. So I have a soft spot for T3, but oh man, there are so many good ones. If I had to pick one, I would probably pick Jolie Bindo as my favorite character from
Okay.
Knights of the Old Republic. He's kind of like that, like Ahsoka kind of figure, kind of like this gray Jedi. He's stepped out of the order, but still can use the Force, still is on the side of good, but kind of in that gray area a little bit. He's not quite as dogmatic as the Jedi. So I really like the character Jolie Bindo. He's never was my favorite, like the first couple of times, playing it through on the Xbox, but my more recent playthroughs here, now that I've gotten it on Steam, I really like taking him along and kind of getting his story beats. So I think if I had to pick one, I think Jolie is who I'm going with.
Okay. And with that, like you said, that experience on the PC, if you and I want to say this to the audience, if you are a gamer, I don't care if it's console or PC, please take the time and actually try this on PC
Mm-hmm.
because it's a major difference. And I do have to tell a quick sad story. I was a Windows guy for quite some time. So using and then that's not the sad part of the story. Windows computers are built or gaming computers. Anything Mac, and I'm gonna say this against my good judgment, Macs are not built for gaming. Not whatsoever.
No.
So I had the original MacBook laptop, and I had Knights of the Old Republic running through Steam. Had my SteelSeries controller, and then I got slapped in the face by one of my college roommates, and he said keyboard and mouse, and he taught me how to just it's a certain way you have to maneuver. It's about like
Mm-hmm.
riding a bike or driving a car. If you don't know how to use your keyboard properly and mouse, you'll fall by the wayside. So definitely anybody that wants a great experience, definitely get a Windows based computer and jump into this game. For the newer generation, I know most people have probably just played it on their iPhone or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, but it's still an amazing game. The touch sensitive deal is great. So let's go into the hardest part of the Knights of the Republic, the second game.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
the Sith Lords. The problem with this game, in my opinion, and I'd love to get yours on this, Brian, is this. I love the game.
Mm-hmm.
When I played it on PC and I got the mods and different things and how the story was rewritten, it made me love that game even more. As a test of time, I truly don't believe it holds up against the original. So I never say anything bad about it. I just say that the first one set a precedent. Second one kept the bar going, and then we'll go into later games later. But it just when you compare both of them, the first one just shines for me. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. I mean, especially like coming off of the original one, 2003, the second one, 2005. You have a different studio making it. And Knights of the Old Republic, the first game was so beloved, and all of those characters were so beloved. So then you get into the second one, and it's a whole new cast of characters. They kind of tie them back in a little bit, but I think that was a big difference for people. The story was way more like philosophical and deep. It wasn't like as kind of a linear like hero's journey kind of a thing. So I think especially like if you were younger, I mean, I would have been in my early 20s, but definitely if you're any younger than that, then I think a lot of that's probably lost on you. So then you kind of latch even more onto the original Knights of the Old Republic. That being said, I love Knights of the Old Republic too, but yeah, I mean, if I had to pick one of the two, then yeah, the first KOTOR, hands down, I think. But yeah, I think it was just a different kind of game, and it was a little jarring, coming right off of that one. You wanted to, keep going with those same characters and explore more of this story, and it was just, like I said, a different cast of characters, a whole different thing. So, yeah, it's still worth your time to play, but yeah, definitely different. So,
Yeah, and nothing against Obsidian or anything like that. Great
mm,
studio later on in life. Um, the company that does the remakes of these games now kind of
mm,
they keep things fairly tight on those. So we go into the next series, and this next series is something that I think brought a lot of people. into Star Wars in this newer generation, the Battlefront games. Are you familiar
Hmm.
with those?
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure, yeah.
yeah, and the Battlefront games I'm talking about are 2004, 2005. Star
Mhm.
Wars Battlefront, the first one was R8, and this is where I go a little different. But Star Wars Battlefront 2, my lord, even to this day, I have a soft spot for that.
Oh yeah.
More characters, uh,
Hmm.
matchups that you would never have had if it wasn't for this game. Battlefront 1 was great, but Battlefront 2 just set a mode for me, and I was like, man, I gotta stick with this. Gotta stick with this. Bought a PlayStation Portable just to play the portable version. So Battlefront was great. That running around battling type stuff, that stuff works in those
Hmm.
environments. So what was your experience like with Battlefront?
Yeah. So yeah, like I mentioned, I had the PlayStation 2. I didn't have the Xbox, so I was playing these ones on PlayStation 2. I really like more of that. I've never been a huge fan of like first person shooters, but I kind of like this. These games were like that third person kind of perspective, in behind the characters. So that was fun. They had fun stories and the locations were really cool. The gameplay was really great. But what my big memory of this game is it had awesome like couch co-op mode, and
Yes.
you could play with a friend and play through like these different missions and stuff, and that was just a blast. We played the heck out of Battlefront 2. Yeah, 2005 version. It I loved it so much. It was great.
Yeah, and I like the first one because most times with Star Wars, it's the first one that sits and sets the precedent. That second one just
Mm.
put me in a mode that I liked it. Now, Battlefront 2015.
Mm, mm.
I was expecting it to be Battlefront 2 from the original, the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. It wasn't. I wasn't upset with it, but I just felt like there could have been more. We had better
Mm.
technology, so much more. The environment, amazing. Environments, I will not take away from it. The second one that came out, once again, the second one I fell in love with because storyline, just how it played
Mm.
out, that one worked out, and the characters on that one were just there for me. What was your experience with the newer ones?
Yeah, so like you, I was super excited when they announced the new ones, when the new one came out. Was it 2015? Is that right? When
Mm-hmm.
the that first one came out. Um, I went out, I bought it the day that it came out. Um, I'm putting it in. It's like installing, onto the PlayStation 4. I'm watching. I've got a projector set up, and I'm just watching. The loading screen was amazing because it's just R2D2 like rolling around. It
Yeah.
looks like so. It looks unbelievably good. Whether you like these games or not, they look spectacular. They're beautiful to look at. But I get it. I fire it up, and it's just online, just these online battle things, and that's not really my kind of game. So I played it a little bit just to kind of look at it, but I probably logged like less than 5 or 6 hours playing that one. So I was really hesitant when the second Battlefront came out from EA. I was like, well, they added the story mode, and that's what I always like to play if I'm going to do a first person shooter. If I can play like a story mode, that's cool. And of course, like to get Star Wars stories. So I'm like, well, I'll get it. And then they had all that fiasco with like the loot boxes or the
Yeah.
to do that at first. I was like, oh man, I really don't know. I don't know if I can justify buying this, but I ended up I picked it up. A couple months after it came out. And the online stuff, I see a lot of people playing it online, and stuff, people that I'm friends with on, through Instagram or whatever, and they seem to really like it. That's just not for me, but I really like the story mode of this game.
Yes.
Iron Verso was really cool. The story was cool. The settings were really fun, and you got to be like this whole like cast of characters. Some were new, some were old. This whole thing. So yeah, a Battlefront 2, it kind of came in and it did the job it should have done in the first place. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with Battlefront 2. I like those characters a lot.
So, audience, we're both saying here about both Battlefront 2s in the two different eras. Go with
That's
the
right.
go,
Yeah.
go with the second one minus the transactions. And one I skipped over because this series is like it's not canon. The Force Unleashed. For
Mm-hmm.
some reason, I don't know how deep you got into those, and I will be getting deeper into those because those will be re-released on the Nintendo Switch. So that's one thing that grabbed me. The Force Unleashed with Darth Vader, being able to play the extra content with him, uh, to get a different aspect, like to get back into the actual Star Wars movie uh, canon, but something outside of it. I'm always interested in how they dive and do these things and how they choose who can do this stuff. And obviously, these games, The Force Unleashed, is before the Disney takeover.
Mhm.
So I don't know what what Lucasfilms was doing at the time, but it seemed like they were kind of like just giving or LucasArts was giving the license to whoever. THQ did a good job on the first one, I believe.
Mhm.
The second one was my favorite because of the DLC and everything you could do with it. Because I spent some money in that one.
Okay.
What were your thoughts on the Force Unleashed? Did you get a chance to play those?
I did get a chance to play those. I didn't get into them as much as I had some of the others. I'd moved out of the country for my wife's work, so I was kind of like my gaming got put on hold there for a couple of years right when those came out. But I did play them. They were a lot of fun. You got to like unlock all of these crazy like force powers and stuff. And I remember
Yes.
that was just like an absolute blast. Like you could just go like on like beast mode with your guy, which was a ton of fun. So I'm really excited because I know those are coming to the Switch here not too much longer, I think, right? In April or something, I think. So
Yes.
yeah, so I'm definitely excited to pick those up for the Switch and get back into those and play through those stories and spend a little bit more time, diving into those characters and things. Like you said, it was at that weird kind of like time period where like Lucasfilm, LucasArts had kind of is right before the sale, so like there was stuff that was just kind of in limbo and stuff, coming out or not coming out, and stuff was getting canceled and things, I guess, while they were trying to figure out where all these pieces were going to land. But yeah, that one slipped through the cracks a little bit for me, but I remember it was a ton of fun and I'm excited to play it again here in a couple months.
And the other thing inside this universe that kind of got me, we'll talk about Republic Commando in just a moment. There was quite a few games that I did not play.
Mm.
One that slipped through the crack, and I'm gonna have to buy it on PlayStation 4 or 5, whatever. Star Wars Bounty Hunter. I never played that. Did you ever have
Mm.
any?
No, I never got into that one at all, other than I've watched a little bit of gameplay online. But yeah, I never got into Bounty Hunter. That's another one people really seem to like. I've heard that it's very hard. And now that I'm older, I'm like, if a game's too hard, I'm like, nope, easy mode, or I'm
Yeah,
moving on.
like
So I'll have to check it out for sure.
yeah, and just finding out that it's released on PlayStation, I was like, yeah, because I didn't. That was when I skipped through the GameCube because the Rogue Squadron games was a Nintendo thing for a long time,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
those games were set. I'm not going to even talk about them because anybody that's played any type of experience like that, you know what Rogue Squadron is about. So those games
Hmm.
set along on another side. The original 64 version, um, probably the best game on Nintendo 64. To be honest, no
Oh
reason,
yeah.
no reason to go back and revisit it because we'll have it on the Switch in another 2 years.
And and it was a launch title, if I recall, back on the Nintendo
Yeah, I
64.
believe
So.
so. That one was a good one. But yeah, that Bounty Hunter, I skipped that, and I'm trying to think of anything else that was, the Oculus Rift stuff like that. I didn't do that.
Oh, okay.
Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That's the next thing.
Hmm.
I played that. Did you enjoy that?
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that game's great, and that's more up my alley. So, kind of aside from the Star Wars stuff, one of the big things that LucasArts did, especially back in like the late '80s and into the '90s, were like those point and click adventure games, and I loved
Yes.
those. The LucasArts one, like Full Throttle, Grim Fandango, the Monkey Island games. Those are like some of my favorite just video games of all time. So I'm more inclined to like kind of more story driven kind of actiony puzzle type things. So, when we get Jedi Fallen Order and I'm like, oh, okay, this is like Uncharted or something, but it's Star Wars. Sign me up for that because that sounds amazing. And yeah, the story is fantastic. It looks beautiful. I just recently I got a PlayStation 5, so you can, if you had it, you get the free like graphical like update to it. So I just have started playing back through it. I'm about maybe 10 hours or so into it. I've been playing it very slowly on my very, very small up and coming Twitch channel. But um,
Okay.
yeah, just getting back into that. I love that game. It's so much fun, and just getting that story again and spending a little bit more time now that I kind of know like what the story beats are, so I can try to track down some more of the hidden stuff and cross stuff off the journal. That's pretty fun. So.
And that's one thing with that one. Like I said, currently right now, that's that's the best Star Wars game I think that's out. Um,
Mm.
and we're about to dive into one game that I was highly disappointed in. And I don't know because, like I said, I'm an Nintendo 64 guy, and I played Rogue Squadron. I know what it's like
Mm.
to be in that X-wing, Y-wing, different things like that over a period of time. And I will tell anyone this real quick, just as a quick disclaimer: if you have a chance to get a Nintendo GameCube just for any reason, the Rogue Squadron that was out on that, I think it was
Mm.
Rogue Leader or something like that. Probably the best one you'll ever play. So, and I don't see that ever being re-released or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's some good ones to get into, but the one we're about to talk about is Star Wars Squadrons.
Okay, yeah.
I've got to be 100% honest with you on this one. I waited and I didn't buy it.
Okay.
I waited a long time with the job I do. Everybody knows I run around Walmarts across the country.
Mm-hmm.
I found it at a really deep discount and I bought it. And I played it and it was worth what I paid for
Yeah.
it. Eh, I think Electronic Arts or EA had a lot on their plate when they were doing Fallen Order.
Mm-hmm.
You have different studios working on things, but I don't believe the creative direction was really taken in part with this one. Like I said, if you're an old school from the Rogue Squadron thing, you expect a little more, and that's all I'm going to say on it. It's not a bad game. It's
Sure.
just it's just not going to be something. If you can buy it now at the price that you can get it at, it's a good buy. But
Yeah. Yeah, you can always find a good deal on it. I actually did. I bought this, I think, right around launch time. I just bought it digitally and had it. And it's fine. I'm not super into like space combat type of things or like flying combat games. I'm really terrible at them, which is partially why I don't like them. Yeah, the stories it's not my favorite. It looks weird, and I think it's because it was kind of like this like partial like console game slash partial like they really wanted people to use the PlayStation VR for it. So if you're not doing that, then it just kind of looks weird and you're just scrolling around this room. So that's kind of, I don't know, something. But if you like those kind of games now, especially, you can, like you said, you can get it, for, I don't know, probably less than $10 most days if you
yes,
if you're really looking for it. It's fine for that price. And I think like when it first came out, I think it was still kind of budget. I think it was only like $30. So at least didn't waste a bunch of money on it. But not my favorite. Not the worst. Like it was okay. I wasn't in love with it. I've still not finished like the story mode on it. I've started it a couple of times, and I think that's probably not very good because I think the story is probably only like 3 hours long, maybe something like that. So
yeah, so it's very underwhelming. And on a side note, there's a lot of canceled games. There's so many canceled games that it doesn't make sense.
mm,
We're gonna definitely get a remake of Knights of the Old Republic, which is going to be amazing. But there's one game that will stay in infamy, like that people that we talk about in circles. Star Wars
mm,
1313.
1313, yeah,
Because you get storyboards all the time about it. It seemed like it was
yeah.
supposed to be the savior or the greatest game ever.
There were storyboards, there were animatics, there were articles about it. I think there were advertisements for it. Like this thing was gonna blow people away, and then just nothing. It just went crickets on it, right? It got dropped so fast and so hard, and I don't know. Like now it's almost like this like mythological thing, right? Like
Yes.
if they ever were to revive this thing, bring it back from the dead and release it, everyone would hate it because now at this point we've built it up to be this like next level thing. It could never live up to the hype. But yeah, this thing was supposed to be just massive. Everyone wanted it. It was coming out. It looked amazing. It sounded amazing. And and yeah, and then it vanished from the face of the earth.
Yeah, and I think that's the one that everyone talks about, like that one. Not so much about the Force Unleashed 3. The whole deal with that was THQ went under, and
Mhm.
at that time, during the transition of Disney fully taking over and building up their own licensing agreements, Star Wars was kind of in limbo after 2015, basically.
Mhm.
And then once everything got settled with EA, we got some games, and we're still getting some quality stuff like the Fallen Order. So, Brian, it comes a point in our episode because we talked about a lot of games.
Mhm.
Um, and we know that Knights of the Republic is probably the most impactful game for both of us. We can agree with that hands down.
Sure. Oh yeah.
What is your number two game And the reason I ask you this, I'm gonna put some filler in here real quick so that you can get everything formulated.
Okay.
We could make a top 10 list all day long, but
Hmm.
I have a personal go-to that I play after I play KOTOR,
Hmm.
and I sometimes have to pick a different system to play it on. It's not necessarily, I mean, I can play it on PC if I want, but I'm one of the
Hmm.
guys, so sometimes I have certain consoles and different things I'll play it on. But
Right.
what is your number two game?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. That is really tough. That is really tough. So part of me wants to take the easy answer and say, of course, it's Knights of the Old Republic 2, right? It's the sequel to one of the greatest video games of all time. It has to be that. And then another part of me wants to say it's Rebel Assault because that has so much nostalgia for me. And is that was at the part of my life where I was really getting big into like computer games and stuff like that. But I think if I had to just pick what my second favorite one is, I think on story and gameplay, and just the way that I like to play video games and consume video game stories, it's probably Jedi Fallen Order. That's
Okay.
probably my second favorite game. Yeah.
And mine will throw you for a twist. I don't care too much for first person shooters.
Hmm.
My number two is Republic Commando.
Okay.
And here's my reason why. Because I was kind of in that Halo type deal
Hmm.
in life, and it had a Halo feel to it, but it was Star Wars. And having it now on the Switch makes it easier, when I want to play it. So that is my go-to. Like I can jump into that because
Okay.
I mean it's decent and all, not so much story driven there, but it's kind of
Hmm.
mindless and it gives me like a good experience. And uh, there's still a network of people that are playing it online and
Hmm.
stuff. So I like that. Just as my quick go-to if I'm at a hotel or something like that, because
Right. Okay.
everything with Star Wars is driven. So that's my number two. And on top of that, I want to thank you for coming on West Virginia and Commonplace and doing this with me because we've talked about it for a little bit here and there. It
Hmm.
originally started
Yeah.
off as Shadows of the Empire, and then it went further than that. And I'll definitely have to have you back on for some more detailed stuff that we can go into about these games.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
so both of us as podcasters and as Star Wars journalists, well, you're more Star Wars journalist than I am. What has been, and this is the hard one, this is my 2020 question, this is my Diane Sawyer, Barbara
Oh.
Walters
Okay.
type deal. Okay.
Oh. Okay.
All right. What has been the most disappointing game inside the Star Wars series? And the reason I ask this is because I have a game that is an utmost disappointment to me. Um,
Okay.
and the reason that this game was a disappointment to me was that it always follows, and I've already spoke about it. It always seems like with these games, it's a Battlefront game.
Hmm.
The second one's always better, and it's like they
Right.
can't learn. They can't learn from that. So obviously, Battlefront 2 on the original series, like it did everything I needed it to do. But
Hmm.
the first one was a disappointment to me after I played the second one. Before it wasn't because I was all happy to have it.
Right.
But it seemed like in that era of games, and that's even playing Battlefront on the PC. Like playing the second one on the PC is like it's just like icing on a cake. I'll go
Hmm.
back and play it to this day. But the first one, after having the second one, that's the only reason I can feel this way. I feel like the first one was rushed and it just. I mean, I understand it's a precedent, but the second one got everything right.
Right. Yeah. 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 My biggest Star Wars miss. Yeah. It's probably the 2015 Battlefront. We've been waiting a long time for a really good Star Wars video game. I mean, you have two of the largest entertainment companies in the world, between Lucasfilm and EA, making this thing, and it should have been incredible, and then it kind of fell flat. For me, I know it still had its fans, but yeah, it was something I'd waited a long time for. Like I said, I bought it day one, and then I barely played it. My favorite part of the game, like I said, was watching R2 roll around while it's installing on my on my PlayStation. So yeah, that's the big miss for me.
Okay, and I can wholeheartedly agree with that. It's something about those first Battlefronts, either
Mm,
error, just missing something there. And I'd like to get your perspective, opinion on this.
okay.
Do you feel like we're going to get a Battlefront 3?
Um, as of right now, they say that it's shelved. Um, here's what I think. I think we're going to get another Battlefront game, but I don't think it's going to be Battlefront 3. It's just going to be they're just going to call it Battlefront again. They're just going to start over again. They're going to give it 5 or 6 years off, and then they'll come back with something else.
right. And I say as a whole, I love Electronic Arts, but man, I would love, well, not Activision can't do it now, but I would love just for another studio to get involved with these games.
Mm,
Because, you know, going with the Jedi Knight stuff, that was Activision stuff. So
mm.
it went pretty well,
It could,
and
it could pass back and forth, and I mean, they could even do something like with the Call of Duties, what that goes back and forth between the two studios. So I think maybe they could do something like that, and that'll keep it fresh and keep them, trying to compete with each other. Because I think that's the big problem, right? EA was the sole licensee of Star Wars games, so they didn't really have any reason to make games better than they needed to. Like they didn't have someone else making a game and then be like, oh, well, EA's game's terrible and their game is great. So I think a little bit of competition. And I think we're going to start seeing that here now that the Lucasfilm Games is kind of getting up and running, and we'll start seeing some more stuff coming out. Oh, and we didn't even talk about Lego Star Wars coming out
oh
April
Lord,
5th. Oh man, I can't wait for that. It's been delayed for so long. I thought it was never coming out, but I have it on pre-order. I'm ready to go. I can't wait for that.
uh, yeah, I can't believe we didn't even talk about Lego Star Wars because that right there was inspirational because like it seemed like they dropped those on every console,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all popular. There's no complaints in those games because those games are built for fun. They
Yep.
they
Yeah, just
they
fun. Yeah.
they make the environment great for children to get involved. And
Mm.
at some point, I'll definitely want to have you back on because we'll be able to talk about all the different things. I know I would like to talk to you about Admiral Thrawn sometime because there's things with him from the books to now. Like
Yep.
one thing I'll say, and this is off topic for anyone, I don't like how Disney dissected certain things that were canon and not canon. Like
Mm.
we had some good books that should have been made into miniseries on Disney Plus. But anyway, coming back over into the game realm, one thing that I do hope does happen with these games, they get a different developer and they get anyone except Square Enix. If Square gets involved with an RPG or Star Wars, it'll end up like the Marvel game and like the or the
Yeah.
Avengers game and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Um,
Right.
I would just love for BioWare to have a way to just come back and which they should. That's Electronic Arts anyway.
Hmm.
BioWare should be doing, their part.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would love to see some sort of, yeah, like RPG back from them, um, or some sort of, like action adventure RPG kind of a thing, kind of in that same vein, well, you had KOTOR went into Mass Effect. So, something along those lines or, something in, like Fallout kind of a thing or something
Yeah,
like that set in Star Wars. That would be really cool.
right. Just something there, and they got BioWare just going to waste. So,
Yep.
Brian, I want to thank you for coming on West Virginia and Commonplace real quick. Could you do a shameless plug? Tell everybody where they can meet, greet you, and where they can't meet you and greet you, and we'll end the show on that.
Yeah, perfect. No, thank you so much for having me. This was a ton of fun. Like you said, we've been talking about it for a couple months now, trying to work something out. So glad we finally got to get together. So if you wanna catch up with me, I'm on Instagram primarily. It's at astro_droid_, which is it's primarily like a Star Wars type of an Instagram, but you can reach out to me about any of that stuff. And like I mentioned, I just started streaming on Twitch. I'm planning to go through like the LucasArts like catalog. I'm doing Fallen Order right now and trying to get into that. I've got Republic Commando is on deck for the Switch. I'm hoping to do that one next. So that's the same username. And then if you want to find either the podcast, Drink the Movies, and the Old Republic podcast can be found anywhere where you're getting your podcasts. So just search for either of those, and I've got links in my Instagram bio for both of those. So check them out. We have a lot of fun, and yeah, hopefully you'll find something good to listen to. So yeah, thank you again so much for having me on.
All right. And once again, audience, after this show, all the information that Brian said there, all my guests, I get them to provide that information to me, will be amazing in the show notes. Show notes, you'll be able to find him, link up with him, and check on all his endeavors. And like I said, he's going over to Twitch. We'll be over on Twitch. And maybe we can sit in on him playing some Star Wars at some point and see
Yeah.
what's going on over there. So once again, this is JR from West Virginia and Commonplace. I want to thank you all for listening. And remember, it's not hard to be a Star Wars fan. It's really hard to keep up with Star Trek.